After 33 years of hosting every Freeman family reunion in my own backyard, my son stood up at a planning dinner in front of the whole family and said that this year I would just ruin it. He said it with sweet tea in his hand and a smile on his face, like he was doing me a favor. And then he sat back down and asked the waiter for more rolls, while my heart came apart quietly over a plate of food I never touched. What my son did not know, what not one soul at that long table knew, was that inside of 8 weeks, I would sign my name twice, once to let something go, and once to take hold of something new, and that by the second Saturday of July, 40 Freemans would drive right past his rented hall to get to me. My name is Odessa Freeman. I am 61 years old, born and raised in Columbus, Georgia, where the summer heat lays across your shoulders like a warm towel and the church bells still mean what they say. Before I carry on, do me one small kindness. Tell me down in the comments where you are listening from tonight and what time it is there. I read every single comment, and it does my heart good to know somebody is sitting up with me. And if stories about being counted out and coming back gentle and strong find a home in you, go on and subscribe, because I lived this one, every word of it, and I am going to tell it to you slow, from the beginning. It began on the first Saturday of May at a steakhouse off Veterans Parkway. My daughter-in-law, Kendra, had rented the private room in the back, the one with the long table and the white cloth and the little brass lamps, and she had called it a family planning dinner, which should have told me something right there, because in 33 years, nobody had ever needed a private room to plan a Freeman reunion. You planned it standing in my kitchen with a deviled egg in your hand. That was the whole committee. But I went, and I wore my good blue dress, and I brought a pound cake in a carrier because my mother raised me to never enter a room empty-handed. My son Malcolm sat at the head of the table. He is 37, tall like his daddy, with his daddy's hands and none of his daddy's patience. Kendra sat at his right with her phone lying face up beside her fork like a dinner guest. My sister Ruthie sat next to me, smelling like gardenia and ready to be unimpressed. My niece Patrice was there with her husband, and down at the far end sat my grandbabies, Elijah, who is 14 and lives inside that phone of his, and little Zora, who is 8, and lives inside whatever story she is telling herself that day. Zora waved at me with both hands when I came in, like I was a parade. We got through the salads all right. Then, Kendra picked up her spoon and tapped her glass. Ding, 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 dainty as you please. And Malcolm stood up and buttoned his jacket the same as he did at his wedding. Family, he said, we have news. This year, the Freeman reunion is going in a new direction. We booked the Magnolia Room out on Macon Road for the second Saturday in July. Catered stations. A DJ. Matching shirts, gold and white. Kendra built a website. There's a hashtag. He let that sit like he had announced a moon landing. The older generation carried this thing a long time. A new generation is taking the torch. Folks clapped a little polite clap. I clapped too, because a torch is heavy and I have carried one, and I truly did not hear the insult galloping toward me. I leaned forward and I smiled at my boy and offered him the only thing I have ever offered anybody, which is help. That sounds real nice, baby, I said. Y'all just tell me what to bring. I'll fry the catfish and do my potato salad, and I'll bake the pound cakes like always. Folks will be looking for them. Malcolm laughed before I even finished. Not a mean laugh, and somehow that made it worse. It was the laugh you give a child who wants to help you drive. Mama, no offense, but if we let you take over, you'd just ruin it. The old food, the old backyard, the old ways, the same dry program every single year. People fall asleep by 3 o'clock. We want fresh. We want elevated. He spread his hands like he was smoothing a bedsheet over me. You can come and sit and be served for once. Won't that be nice? You just ruin it. 4 words, said Easy, between the bread basket and the entrees. 33 years of my shoulders aching over a fryer in July heat. 33 years of folding tables and card tables and borrowed tables. 33 years of learning which cousin could not sit near which uncle, and my boy laid it all down in 4 words and reached for a roll. Nobody said anything. That is the part I want somebody to understand. Ruthie set her fork down slow, the click of it loud as a church door. Patrice found something fascinating in the tablecloth. Patrice's husband got very busy with his sweet tea. Elijah stared into his plate like it was a phone. Only Zora looked at me, and she looked confused, because she is 8, and in her world grandma and the reunion were the same word. I kept my face soft. I learned that a long time ago, in rooms harder than that one. I said, "All right, baby, it's y'all's turn then," and my voice did not shake, and I am proud of that to this day. It was Patrice, bless her heart, who stepped in the hole. She was trying to make peace, and she said, "Aunt Odessa, you'll see. It's all organized. It's all in the thread. The menu poll and the shirt sizes and everything, it's all in the chat." I said, "What chat?" The quiet that came after that question was a different kind of quiet. Kendra's eyes went to Malcolm, and Malcolm's eyes went to his plate. I took my phone out of my purse, and I set my reading glasses on, and I looked, slow and careful, while the whole table watched me do it. There was a group message called Freeman Reunion, with a little firecracker next to the name. Patrice turned her phone around so I could see. 22 names in that group. My sister was in it. My niece was in it. A cousin I have not seen since a funeral in Albany was in it. Elijah was in it, and that child cannot remember to flush. My name was not in it. "It's just logistics, Mama Odessa," Kendra said, very fast and very light. "We didn't want to worry you with all the back and forth. You know how the notifications get. We were going to send you the details," Malcolm said, "once it was all set, so you could just show up like a guest." "That's a good thing, Mama. That's us taking care of you." I looked at my son a long moment. I was hunting his daddy in that face, and I could not find him. Then I folded my napkin the same as I have folded napkins my whole life, laid it beside the plate, and stood up, and picked up my purse, and I was not dramatic about it, whatever Kendra says to this day. "Thank you for supper," I said. "Malcolm, I love you. I have loved you since before you had teeth, and I am not going to fight you for a party." I touched Zora's little braids on my way by, because none of it, not 1 ounce of it, was that baby's fault. At the door I stopped because there is always one more thing, and the Lord had not yet finished teaching me to leave it unsaid. But all I said was, "The pound cake in the green carrier is for the table. It's already made. Be ashamed to waste it." And I walked out past the hostess stand into the warm night, and I heard the room start back up behind me, low and embarrassed, like a radio somebody turned down. My son believed he had handled a difficult old woman. He believed a reunion was a torch you could take. He would learn, before that summer was over, that it was a fire, and a fire has to be tended, and tending is the one thing you cannot cater. But that night he knew none of it. That night he paid the check and posted something about new beginnings. And I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2, talking to the good Lord at every red light on Macon Road, and the thing I asked him for was not revenge. I have lived too long to pray stupid. I said, "Lord, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life, now that the middle of it is over? Show me, because I have run clean out of my own ideas. I did not know it yet, but he had already answered. The answer was sitting 40 minutes west of my kitchen, under 6 years of dust in kudzu, with a rotten dock and a tin roof full of pecans, waiting on a widow with strong hands and a real estate agent in her church directory. Let me take you home first, so you know what I was grieving. The house on Rosemont Drive was brick, 4 bedrooms, with a pecan tree in the backyard old enough to remember segregation and petty enough to drop nuts on your windshield about it. Harold and I bought that house in 1979, when Rosemont was the kind of street where a black schoolteacher and a machinist from the mill had to sit across from a banker and hold hands under the table, while he decided whether they were the right kind of people. We were. We made every payment through layoffs and strikes, and one terrible year when the mill cut Harold to half shifts, and I graded papers by day and did alterations by night. And in 1998, we paid that house off, every cent, and Harold walked the paid mortgage papers out to the backyard grill and held a lighter to the corner of a copy he had made special. Because you keep the real ones. And we stood there with sweet rolls and coffee, watching the smoke go up over the pecan tree like a little offering. My husband laughed so hard he cried. 9 years ago, his heart quit on him in his sleep, gentle as he was. And since then, the house had been 4 bedrooms of quiet, with one woman rattling in it. But oh, that backyard. 33 summers of reunions had worn paths in that grass, the same as cattle wear paths on a hill. The horseshoe pit Harold dug the summer Malcolm turned 5. The long line where the tables went, folding tables and card tables, and the door on Sawhorse's table for the teenagers. The corner by the fence where my Uncle Sylvester set up his dominoes and fleeced 3 generations of Freemans out of their dignity. I could stand at my kitchen window in the dead of February and see all of it in the yellow of July. That kitchen fed 40 and 50 people at a time out of one regular oven and a turkey fryer, and it never once failed me, and neither did my 2 hands. And that, children, is what my son called the old ways. That night after the steakhouse, I sat at my kitchen table in the dark for a long time. I mean to tell you the truth about that night, because the truth is the whole reason I am telling this. I opened the drawer by the stove where I keep the reunion papers. Every year I wrote the menu on a piece of notebook paper, the head count. Who brought what ran out, what got rained on. 33 pieces of paper in a rubber band. I sat there in the dark and held them, and I felt exactly like what my son's eyes had told me I was. An old woman being managed. And I cried. Not pretty crying. The kind you do with your fist against your mouth so the neighbor's dog won't start up. And then I prayed, out loud, in my empty kitchen, which is a thing widows do, and I have quit apologizing for it. I said, Lord, I am hurt. I am hurt in the one place I never guarded, because who guards against their own child? I said, I won't pretend I don't want to call every Freeman in that phone and tell them what he said and watch it burn. You know me. You know I could. And then I said the only brave thing I said that whole night. I said, but I don't want to become somebody small on my son's account. I have too few years left to spend a single one of them bitter. Show me a door, and I will walk through it, and I will not slam it behind me. You pray a prayer like that, you had better mean it, because he will take you up on it fast. He took me up on it before the coffee finished the next morning. Ruthie came by at 8 with a coffee cake and a mouthful of fire. My sister is 58, retired off the school buses, and she loves me the loud way. She set that cake down on my counter like she was pressing charges with it. I have been up all night, she said. I wrote 3 messages to that boy and deleted every one. Odessa, He embarrassed you before the whole family on purpose. Kendra planned that dinner like a corporate layoff. Private room so nobody could make a scene. I have half a mind to get in that chat and read them the whole book of Lamentations. You will not, I said, and I poured her coffee. Somebody needs to say something. Somebody always needs to say something. That's how every family I know got broke in half. I sat down across from her. Ruthie, if I fight him, I lose him. If I beg him, I lose me. There's got to be a third road, and I asked the Lord for it last night, and I mean to sit here drinking this coffee until he shows it to me. Ruthie looked at me over her cup for a good while. Then she said, quiet. What did you ask him for exactly? A door. Now I need you to understand that what happened next is true, because it is the hinge the whole story swings on. That afternoon I finally cleaned out Harold's shed, a chore I had been walking past for 9 years, and in the bottom of his tackle box, under the crappy jigs and a church key and a spark plug he never met a use for, was a photograph. Harold, maybe 50 in it, standing on somebody's dock out at Lake Oliver with a stringer of fish and that grin. On the back, in his mill shift printing, he had written 4 words. Someday, a porch. Water. I sat down right there on the shed step in the dust with that picture and laughed and cried at the same time. And if you have ever done both at once, you know it feels like being wrung out and filled up in the same motion. Every August of our marriage, that man would drive us out to Lake Oliver, and we would eat fish sandwiches out of wax paper in the truck, and he would point across the water at the houses with their long green yards running down to their docks, and he would say, someday, Odessa, someday a porch on the water, you watch. And I would say, with what, Harold? Pecan money? And he would say, woman, I am telling you, someday, and we would laugh and drive home to the house we could afford, and be happy, because we were. We never got the porch. He ran out of some days. But sitting on that shed step, 61 years old, fresh off being told I would ruin the only thing I had left that felt like mine, I did the arithmetic I had never once let myself do. A paid-off brick house near the medical center. A teacher's pension, a machinist's life insurance I had never touched, because touching it felt like agreeing he was gone. And no mortgage, no debt, nobody left to ask permission. I went in the house and called Sister Maxine before I could talk myself out of it. Maxine sings alto in the choir at New Hope Baptist and sells houses like other women sell Avon, which is to say constantly and to everyone. Maxine, I said, it's Odessa Freeman. I want to ask you something, and I don't want you to be sensible about it. She said, honey, I have been waiting years for somebody to say that. Ask it. What would my house bring, and is there anything for sale out on Lake Oliver that a stubborn woman could fix? There was a pause, and then Maxine started laughing, low and delighted. And that laugh, right there, was the door opening. I know it now. I halfway knew it then. Maxine came by Tuesday with her folder and her heels and walked my house like a general inspecting a fort she intended to sell. She ran her hand down the banister, looked in the closets, stood in the backyard a minute with her arms folded looking at the pecan tree. This tree by itself will move the house, Odessa, she said. Young couples see a pecan this old and start naming their children. Paid off, you said. Since 1998. Odessa, houses on this street don't sit 2 weeks. Young doctors from the medical center are paying foolish money to be this close. I can bring you $260,000, and if the Lord is in a mood, more. She turned around and looked at me straight. Now tell me why. Because I sell a lot of houses to people running from something, and I'd rather sell this one to a woman running toward something. So I told her. Not the steakhouse part, not at first. I told her about the photograph. And Maxine, who buries her own hurts in other people's closings, sat down on my back steps in her good skirt and said, "My daddy had a boat he never launched." Sat in the yard 11 years. Then she stood up, brushed off, and became a general again. There's a listing that's been dead on the books all winter. Estate sale, western shore of Lake Oliver, 40 minutes out. The heirs are up north somewhere, and they have dropped the price twice. It's rough, Odessa. 6 years empty. But it's 2 acres. And the yard runs flat down to the water, and there's a dock. Or there was one before the lake got at it. I said, "When can we see it?" She said, "I've got the key in my purse." I want to tell about the sign first, though, because the sign is where my son found out, and how he found out matters to this story. Maxine's crew put the for sale sign in my front yard on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my phone was ringing, because Columbus is a big little town and Rosemont Drive is a small street with a fast mouth. Malcolm did not say hello. "Mama, there is a sign in your yard. Miss Ida sent Kendra a picture of it. Tell me it's some kind of mistake." "It's not a mistake, baby. I'm selling the house." You're selling the house." "Our house. The house I grew up in." Just like that, no family meeting, no discussion, nothing? I let a little quiet sit there before I answered, because I wanted him to hear it, and then I said, gentle as I could, I wasn't in the group where things get discussed. He didn't have anything for that. I heard him breathe. I heard Kendra in the background asking, "What did she say? What did she say?" Then he came back with his voice managed, the voice he uses on clients, and said, Okay, Mama. I hear you. You're hurt about the dinner. And this is you making a statement. It's a big dramatic statement, okay, message received. Now take the sign down, and let's talk about it like adults. There's nothing to talk about, son. It's my house, mine and your daddy's. We bought it, we paid for it, and I've rattled around in it alone for 9 years. It's too much house for one woman and a memory, and I have found somewhere my hands are needed. Where? Where are you going? And when I didn't answer right away, he said, softer, and meaner for being soft, "You can't just do things, Mama, not at your age. This is exactly the kind of decision people your age get taken advantage of on. Have you even had anybody look at whatever it is? Do you have any idea what you're doing?" And there it was again, the same sentence, wearing different clothes. Just ruin. You can't just do things. Not at your age. I looked out my kitchen window at the pecan tree while my son explained me to myself, and I found that my eyes were dry and my voice, when it came, was level as a floor joist. Malcolm. I taught school for 31 years. I have buried my parents, my brother, and my husband, and balanced a checkbook through all of it. I raised you on a teacher's salary in the house you're worried about, and the last time you looked at my finances you were 16 and stealing 20s out of my purse, which I also knew about and let the Lord handle. I know exactly what I am doing. It is the first thing I have done for myself in this century, and it is already done in my heart. So save your breath for your hashtag. Ruthie says I have a switchblade in me somewhere. I keep it folded, is all. That was the one time all summer I let it show, 1 sentence's worth, and then I folded it back and said I loved him, and hung up while he was still talking, which the Bible does not forbid, I checked. Now let me take you out to the lake, that first time, because everything that happens after starts on that dock. Maxine drove, and Ruthie rode in the back seat narrating her doubts to the window. 40 minutes west out of Columbus, off the highway onto a county road, off the county road onto gravel, through a tunnel of green so thick it turned the light underwater. And then the trees opened, and there it stood. Now, I will not lie to you and say it was beautiful. It was a heartbreak with a roof, a long, low house, cedar under gray paint that was giving up in sheets, windows blind with dust, gutters wearing little forests. The yard was 2 acres of waist-high seed grass with kudzu working its slow strangle in from the fence line, and down at the bottom of it, the lake lay wide and glittering and completely indifferent. The only thing on the property that had kept itself up, the dock stuck out into the water like a bad tooth, half its boards gone or going, the latter rusted to lace. Ruthie said, "Lord have mercy," in the tone she uses for car wrecks. Maxine said, "I told you it was rough. Bones are good, though. Cedar don't rot easy. That tin roof is better than it looks." And the well pump was replaced the year before the old man passed. 2 acres, 90 feet of water frontage. They're asking 180, and they will not get it. But I wasn't listening to either one of them, because my legs were already carrying me down through that tall grass in my church shoes, wet to the ankle with morning still in it, straight down the slope to the water. I stepped over the broken boards, out onto the part of the dock that still held, and I stood where Harold would have stood. And I looked back up the yard at the house. And here is the thing I cannot prove and will not argue about. I did not see wreckage. I saw tables. I saw a long line of tables running down that flat green yard under strung lights, and children coming off that dock like popcorn off a skillet, and smoke rising from a fish fryer. And zinnias. Don't ask me why zinnias, orange and yellow, and shameless pink. A whole hollering border of them along a walk that did not exist yet. I saw it the way you see a memory, finished and warm, except it was ahead of me instead of behind me. 90 feet of shoreline, and every foot of it said the same word. Someday, I stood out there so long that Ruthie came down to check on me, stepping over the gaps and holding her purse like a life vest. She stood beside me and looked at the water and then at my face, and my sister has known me 61 years, since I was minutes old, and she did not need to be told anything. All she said was, "You're going to want a bigger fryer." I made the offer that same afternoon at Maxine's kitchen table. $165. Cash on the sale of Rosemont. 30 days to close. The heirs up north took it in 2 days flat. The same speed at which you accept anything you never loved. And that is how, at 61 years old, in the space of 1 month, I signed my name twice, exactly like I told you at the start. Once at a title office in Columbus, letting go of 33 summers with a pen while Maxine handed me tissues, and once at a title office in Hamilton, taking hold of 2 ruined acres and 90 feet of lakefront, with the same pen, because I asked the man, "Can I keep this pen?" And he laughed and said, "Ma'am, after a double closing like this one, you can have the chair you're sitting in too." Malcolm did not come to either signing. He knew about both. Kendra sent a card, one of those careful cards that says "thinking of you," which is true as far as it goes. The person thinking of me hardest that month never wrote at all. But I am getting ahead of my own story, and you will want it in order. Because first came the church crew, and the spring of sawdust and gospel, and a 20-foot table made of a dead man's lumber. And while I was sanding a dock in tennis shoes, my son was over on Macon Road, signing a contract of his own, with a clause on page 4 that none of us had ever heard of yet. Now, if you've made it this far into my story, you are my kind of company, and I would be honored to have you stay for the whole thing, because the best of it is still coming. Go on and tap that subscribe button so stories like mine can find you again. And put a word in the comments if anybody ever counted you out too soon. I promise you, I will read it. All right. Where was I? 2 ruined acres, 90 feet of lakeshore, and a pen I got to keep. The keys they handed me at that closing were nothing to look at. 2 brass keys on a ring of baling wire, one for the front door and one for a padlock nobody could find the lock to. The title man apologized for them. "The estate never sent us anything nicer, ma'am," he said. I told him, "A key does not have to be pretty, sir. It just has to turn." Ruthie drove me straight out to the lake from the signing, and I walked into my own echoing front room, with the dust hanging in the window light like the whole house was holding its breath, and I stood there in the middle of the floor and said out loud, "Well, Lord, it's me and you and the mice now, and I have handled worse company." I slept there the first night on a cot from the camping aisle, because Maxine begged me to keep the Rosemont bed until the movers came, and I would not. You cannot start a new life sleeping in the old one. I lay on that cot and listened. A house that has been empty 6 years is loud. Children, louder than a full one. The tin roof ticked as it let go of the day's heat, and under all of it, all night, steady as a pulse, the water moved against what was left of the dock. Hush, hush, hush. I did not cry that night either, but I did, and it was a different water than the kitchen table kind, and by morning I understood the difference. One kind grieves what is gone. The other kind makes room. Word travels through a church faster than fire through broom sage. I had not been at New Hope 2 Sundays running before Maxine, who cannot keep good news to herself any better than bad, stood up at the announcements and told the whole congregation, "Sister Odessa has gone and bought herself a lake place with a dock on it, and she is fixing to restore the whole thing by hand, so let us keep her in our prayers and our elbow grease." Heads turned all down my pew, and after service, out on the steps in the spring sun, a man I had known 40 years came walking over with his Bible under his arm like a level, and that man was Deacon Brantley. I need to render Deacon Brantley for you properly, because the Lord was showing off when he made him. 66 years old, built like a chest of drawers, retired off the mill same as Harold, except where Harold ran the machines, Brantley built things, cabinets, porches, half the pews we had just been sitting on. His wife passed 2 years after my Harold, and since then, the man had been quietly building wheelchair ramps all over Muskogee County for anybody the church told him about. No charge, no fuss. He had sawdust in his beard on Sundays. The choir ladies had long since given up on it. He said, "Sister Freeman, Maxine says you bought the old Calhoun place out on Oliver." I said, "I did. Folks keep telling me I've lost my mind." He worked his jaw a minute, looking off across the parking lot, and then he said, "Calhoun kept his tools in the boat shed. If the damp hasn't got them, they're better than anything you can buy now. I'd like to come see about that dock. Just that. Not, you poor thing. Not, have you thought this through?" He looked at me like I was a project worth doing, which, at 61, from anybody, is very nearly poetry. The first Saturday, he came alone with his truck and walked the whole property with me, tapping boards, pulling at porch posts, kneeling down at the dock with his sleeve rolled up, feeling underwater at the pilings while the lake soaked him to the shoulder. I stood on the bank hugging my elbows, waiting on a verdict. He stood up, shook the water off his arm and said, "Pilings are sound." Whoever set these meant it. Deck boards are gone, but boards are just boards. Then he looked up the long slope at the sorry gray house and the seed grass and the kudzu, and he said the sentence I have carried ever since. He said, "There is nothing wrong with this place that work won't cure, and work is free to a willing hand." The second Saturday, he did not come alone. I heard them before I saw them, tires on the gravel and gospel on somebody's radio, and here came Brantley's truck, and behind it a van from the men's ministry. and behind that Maxine's car full of choir ladies with pans on their laps, and behind her my sister with her sleeves already rolled. 11 people got out of those vehicles. 11, some of them I knew all my life, and some were young men from the ministry I only knew to nod at. And every one of them had brought something: work gloves, a chainsaw, a cooler. A look in their eye like Saturday had finally gotten interesting. Brantley climbed down out of his truck first, settled his cap, and looked up my sorry slope like a man reading a full day's work off a page. "Sister Freeman," he called, "quit standing in the sun and point us at it. We brought the whole church and about half the hardware store, and this crew gets contrary when you make them wait." I stood on my porch step and could not say one word. And Ruthie hollered up at me, "Don't you stand there leaking. Point at something that needs doing." So I pointed, and Lord did they do. That first day was nothing but clearing. The young men took the chainsaw and the swing blades to 2 acres of seed grass and scrub, and the smell of cut green rose up over that yard so thick and sweet it made you dizzy. Brantley and 2 others went down the dock pulling rotten boards, throwing them up on the bank in a bone pile, until the dock was just its skeleton standing in the water, pilings and stringers, honest and bare. The choir ladies cleaned 60 years of other people's living out of that house, and they did it singing, one starting a line and the rest coming under her, all afternoon. So the scrubbing and the singing got to be the same motion. I fried chicken for 11 and burned not one piece, and we ate it on the tailgates with the sun going down over the water, and Deacon Brantley said grace so long the biscuits nearly went cold, and nobody minded. And it was near dark that first work Saturday when we found what the boat shed had been hiding. The padlock the little brass key belonged to was on the boat shed the whole time. Back behind a curtain of kudzu the young men had cut away that afternoon. The key turned like it had been waiting. Inside, under tarps gone stiff with dust, old man Calhoun had left his tools. Planes and saws and chisels put away clean, oiled, wrapped in cloth like church silver, and beside the tools, stacked on stickers to keep the air moving through it, was the lumber: cedar, rough sawn, wide boards longer than any man there was tall, more of it than I could count in the shed dark. Brantley ran his hand down a board like he was reading it, and when he turned around, that big steady man had water standing in his eyes. He said, "This is old-growth cedar. You cannot buy this." He was saving it for something, and he ran out of time. He looked at me. "What do you want it to be?" And I heard myself say, without 1 second of planning, "A table. One table long enough that nobody ever has to sit at a second one." The whole shed got quiet. Outside the window the lake went on turning pink. Brantley nodded. Slow. The nodmen like him give a load-bearing wall, and he said, 20 foot. Benches both sides. I'll need 3 Saturdays. Then he wrapped the boards back up gentle as a nurse, and we all went home, and I sat in my car in the dark before I turned the key and told Harold about it. Out loud. Because some news you have to say to somebody who saw the wax paper sandwiches. Sunday after that, I did something I want to speak plainly about, because it matters to how this story goes. I did not call my son and tell him about the shed, or the crew, or the table. Not out of punishment. I want that plain. He had a phone same as mine, and a mother 40 minutes away, and what I had instead of his voice, that whole spring, was his silence, arriving fresh every week. No, I did not call, because I had spent 33 years narrating my life to people as a manner of asking permission for it. Here's what I'm cooking. Here's what I'm planning. Is that all right? Does that suit? And the Lord had put a hammer in my hand and a church in my yard precisely, I believe, so I could learn the other thing. Do the work. Let the work speak. A lit lamp does not send out a group message. It just shines. But I will not pretend I did not think about him out there. Every single Saturday, some young man would get to laughing at the water's edge, or lean on a post exactly a certain fashion, and my heart would say his name. Malcolm at 9 could hand his daddy the right wrench without being asked. Malcolm at 12 fried his first batch of fish at the reunion, with his tongue out the corner of his mouth and every aunt in the yard pretending not to supervise. That boy was in there somewhere, under the hashtag. I had to believe it. A mother's faith is not optional equipment. While I planted, he planned. I got pieces of it secondhand from Patrice Mostly, who had appointed herself my embassy without me asking. The Magnolia Room wanted final head count by mid-June. The caterer Kendra picked did a tasting, and Patrice sent me one photograph of a single scallop sitting dead center on a white plate, like a button on a bedsheet, with a caption that said, "Aunt Odessa." They call this a station. $62 a head, that outfit. For family. And somewhere in all that fine print, on page 4 of a contract my son signed with a fountain pen Kendra bought him for the occasion, there was a paragraph with a heading nobody reads until the day it reads them. I knew nothing about that paragraph yet. Neither did he. It sat there all spring, patient as a snake in a woodpile, while the deposit check cleared. Let me give you that spring the honest, slow way, because those weeks were the medicine. Every Saturday from the middle of May on, the church came to the lake, sometimes 11 of them, sometimes 5, once, on the rainiest morning of the year, just Brantley and Ruthie and me and a pot of coffee, standing in that boat shed watching the water stitch the lake to the sky while Brantley sharpened chisels and told stories about my husband from the mill days that I had never heard before. And that morning fed me better than the sunny ones. We rebuilt the dock first, because Brantley said, "You fix the thing that touches the water before you fix the thing that touches the road." And I never asked him to explain it because some sentences are better left standing whole. He and the young men laid new boards down its spine one by one, drilling and setting, and my job, my actual assigned job, was to walk each board barefoot after it went down. He said, a dock board has to pass a bare foot, not a boot. Splinters don't show themselves to a boot. So there I went, 61 years old, barefoot over the water with my arms out like a girl on a rail line, and the men leaned on their drills and graded me out loud, and when a board failed my foot, they sanded it until it passed. We sanded that whole dock until it went smooth as a church pew, until you could slide your hand anywhere on it and feel nothing but warm. Zora would run it flat out by July, and I knew it while we sanded, and I sanded like I knew it. Then the house. Buttermilk white, we painted it, with the shutters a deep porch green, and the young men scraped and primed while the choir ladies and I put a garden in. Collard starts in a double row, because a lake house without greens is just a motel. Tomatoes staked with Calhoun's own cedar offcuts. Okra, which will grow for anybody with the nerve to plant it. And down both sides of the new gravel walk, from the porch steps clean to the top of the dock, we planted zinnias, orange and yellow, and that loud, unashamed pink. The exact zinnias I had seen from the broken dock in April, standing in a border that did not exist. Sister Rosalie from the choir tried to talk me into something tasteful. Hydrangeas, she said, or a nice bed of hostas along the shade. And I told her, Rosalie, I have been tasteful my whole life, and this year the Lord and I are planting loud. She laughed and dropped seed with me all afternoon. You will want to remember those zinnias. They have a part to play. The table took Brantley 4 Saturdays, not 3, because he got particular partway through it, which is what love looks like in a carpenter. He built it in the boat shed on sawhorses, planing those wide cedar boards, until the grain rose up looking wet, pegged and glued, no screws in the top, benches both sides and 2 fat chairs for the ends. 20 foot, 2 inches thick, and when the last coat of oil went on, and the shed filled up with that smell, cedar and linseed, half the crew found a reason to come stand in the doorway and just breathe. It took 8 of us to walk it out to the yard, everybody hollering directions at everybody, and we set it under the 2 big water oaks halfway down the slope, where the shade lands from noon on. Brantley put his hand flat on it and said, "This table will outlive every argument that ever gets had at it." I have thought about that sentence more than any sermon I heard all year. And it was that same afternoon, with the table settled into its shade for the first time, that Deacon Brantley reached in his shirt pocket and handed me something small and warm from being carried. A fob for my key ring, cut from a cedar offcut of the tabletop itself, sanded round as a river stone, with 2 words burned into it in his careful shop lettering. Lake House. He had drilled it and wired it onto that baling wire ring next to my 2 brass keys before I could say a word. A key ought to say where it belongs, he said, gruff, already turning back to his sawhorses, and I stood there in my dirty gloves holding my own keys like they had just been handed to me off an altar. From that day to this one, those keys have not left my pocketbook, and you will hear about them again. Because on that second Saturday in July, I would be holding that little wooden fob in my fist like a mustard seed, while my whole life turned over one more time. Now you may be wondering where my pride was in all this. Was there not one evening I sat on that new dock and imagined my son seeing it, and felt something that was not entirely holy? There was. There were several. I am telling this story true or I am not telling it. One evening in late May, Ruthie and I sat out with our feet hanging over the water, and she said, "You know what would fix him." One picture. Me, standing on this dock, holding 1 plate of your fish. Posted where all 47 of them scroll. And I laughed. Lord forgive me, I laughed until the dock boards shook. Because I could see it, and the seeing was sweet. But when I got done laughing, I said, "No. Nobody posts this place at them. If this house is a rock in my hand, I have already lost. It has to just be my house, Ruthie. It has to just be where I live." My sister looked at me a long minute, and then she said, "You know what's aggravating about you? You mean it." And that, children, was the whole quiet engine of that spring. Not showing him. Just becoming. The first Sunday dinner out there. First Sunday in June, I did not plan as a shot fired at anybody. I planned it because Mother Hastings, who is 88 and buried 2 husbands, and remembers when our church was a brush arbor, said after service, "Odessa, I have not eaten fish caught fresh out of a lake since before my knees went." So I said, "Then come out Sunday, Mother, and bring your appetite." And then it seemed foolish to fry for 2, so I asked Deacon Brantley, who I owed 900 favors, and Maxine, who I owed a house, and the choir ladies who had scrubbed my floors, and Uncle Sylvester, my daddy's last living brother, 81 years old and still the most dangerous dominoes player in the Chattahoochee Valley. 14 elders came to that first table. I fried crappie the young men had caught off my own dock that morning, and made the potato salad my son had waved away, and Mother Hastings ate on that cedar table under the water oaks, with her shoes off in the grass. And she said, "This puts me in mind of before, when family was a place." Uncle Sylvester looked up from lining out his dominoes and said, "It takes me clean back to your mama's yard, Odessa. God rest her. Same fish smell, and the same lying about the score." And Sister Rosalie, dabbing her eyes on the hem of her apron, said, "Whatever this is, we are doing it again next Sunday, and I am bringing a coconut cake nobody asked me for. 14 elders, children. Not one of them checked a phone, because not one of them ever surrendered to the things. We sang before we ate and again after, the old lining out kind. A voice laying a line down and every other voice coming up under it, and the sound went out over the water in the evening the same as smoke goes, slow and rising, and a man fishing 100 yards off our dock took his cap clean off his head and held it till we finished. Those Sunday tables became a standing thing without anybody deciding it. Second Sunday, 17 came. Third Sunday, 21, and folks brought their own chairs and their own pans, deviled eggs and butter beans, and a coconut cake from Sister Rosalie that nearly caused a schism. I wrote every dinner down in a fresh composition notebook, number 34, who came, what we ate, what the sky did. Because writing it down is my love language, and this time nobody was writing it down as a duty. I was writing it down as a wonder. And here is where the two roads of this story start bending toward each other, though I could not see the crossing yet. Elijah had a learner's permit that June, and Kendra, who to her credit never once tried to keep those children from me, would let him drive the 40 minutes out on a Sunday afternoon, with Zora buckled in the back seat, the two of them arriving proud as a parade with a bag of store cookies. And what do children do the moment a dock exists? They film themselves on it. Elijah stood on the end of my dock at golden hour, water going copper behind him, cannonballed off the end of it in his shorts, put it on his little page with the words, "Grandma's lake hits different." Zora made Ruthie record her whole cartwheel routine down the length of it, hollering, "Get all of it, Aunt Ruthie," the landing too, zinnias blazing along both edges of the walk behind her. Neither one of them was campaigning for me. They were just being young, where it was good to be young, in the one place that summer where nobody was managing anybody. But 47 Freemans were in a group chat, children, and every last one of them could see. My son called me on a Tuesday evening in the thick of June, and I knew before I answered that somebody had shown him the videos, because a mother can read a ringtone. I was shelling Purple Hull peas on the porch, with the lake going still and gold in front of me, and I put him on speaker and kept shelling, because a bowl in your lap keeps your voice level. Mama saw Elijah's little video. Grandma's lake. That's the estate sale place Miss Ida was going on about? You bought a whole lake house. I did. You knew I moved, baby. You have my address. I wrote it in your birthday card. A pause with office noise behind it. He worked late all that June. I guess I thought it was, I don't know, a cabin, a trailer or something. That dock looks brand new. It is brand new. Deacon Brantley and the men's ministry rebuilt it. I walked every board of it barefoot myself. You should come see it. Bring the kids. Bring nothing but yourself. There's food here Sundays. He was quiet a second, and then, because worry in my son always came out sounding like arithmetic, he said, "Who paid for all that, Mama? A dock, a whole crew. That is not nothing, and you don't have anybody looking out for you out there." "I paid for what needed paying, baby," I said, "same as I have done with every single thing that carries my name since before you had teeth." The church brought the hands and the hammers, and they would not take a dime. I brought the fish and the coffee. The only thing taking advantage of me out here is the mosquitoes, and I got a citronella candle handling them. Another pause, longer, and when he came back his voice had that managed smoothness again, the client voice, and hearing it aimed at me over a bowl of peas hurt fresh. I will not lie. We're slammed right now, Mama. The reunion's in 4 weeks. We're finalizing the caterer. The head count's been whatever. People are being slow with the RSVP link. It's a lot to carry. And then, because he could not help himself, my son, who I watched believe in himself out of nothing, and Lord knows I helped him build that believing, said, also, I'd appreciate it if the kids' videos weren't, out there confusing the family. We're trying to get people focused on the actual reunion. There's a plan, Mama. There's a whole plan. I looked at the peas in my lap for a second, and the Lord and I had one of our fast little meetings, and what came out of my mouth was, Elijah is 14 and proud of his grandmother, and I refuse to apologize for either one of those things. But I hear you, son. I'm not at war with your plan. I hope that haul is everything you want it to be. I mean that down to my shoes. Okay, he said. And then he was quiet just long enough that I thought, here it comes. Here comes my boy. And I actually leaned toward the phone. And then he said, the RSVP link closes Friday. If you're coming, you'd be, You're invited, obviously, as a guest. It's $25 a head, but I'll cover yours. Children, I want you to sit a minute with that sentence like I had to. I'll cover yours. 33 reunions I fed that family out of my own pocketbook. And my son offered to spot me the ticket price to attend the 34th as a guest of the Freeman family. Ruthie, when I told her, had to go walk around the yard twice. But sitting on that porch, what I felt was not even anger. It was that same finished feeling from the credit union parking lot, except now it had company, because now I knew the difference between being finished and being done. So I said, gentle as I could and meaning every word, save your $25, baby. I'll be at my own table that day either way. Kiss those babies for me. And we said our love yous, because we never once failed to say them. All summer, even that summer, and I sat and shelled the rest of the bowl in the dark. Now, while my little corner of the world was being sanded smooth, the reunion plan was developing what Patrice, my embassy, called texture. I got it in installments, on my porch, over peaches, because Patrice cannot carry news without delivering it. The menu poll had gone up in the chat, and the caterer's menu had things on it like deconstructed peach cobbler, and Aunt Clotilde in Montgomery had replied, deconstructed just means somebody didn't finish. And 40 people put the laughing face on it, and Kendra took the poll down. Then the cover charge went up, to cover the hall and the DJ, with a little payment link. And the chat went so quiet, you could hear it from other phones. Sylvester called Patrice long distance from his recliner. In 81 years, he said, I never once paid a cover charge to see my own kinfolk. And I am not fixing to start at the door of a carpeted room on Macon Road with no dominoes and no shade. And under all the joking there was something not funny at all, which Patrice put her finger on one evening, quiet, watching Elijah's copper water video for maybe the 10th time. She said, Aunt Odessa, you know what it is? The hall costs money and everybody can feel it costing. Your yard never cost anything but showing up. That's not about old or new. That's about whether family is a ticket or a table. I wrote that down in Notebook 34 that same night with her name by it, because when somebody says the whole sermon in 2 sentences, you keep it. I will not pretend the Sunday dinners and the reunion were separate weather systems, because by late June they were pulling on each other, and I could feel it even without the chat. 21 at my table became 26. Cousins I had not fed since Harold's funeral found reasons to be in the area on a Sunday. Renetta and her husband drove down from Atlanta, just happened to be passing, with a cooler of ribs like a peace treaty, and stayed until the fireflies came up. And every single one of them, at some point in the afternoon, would get quiet, looking down that slope past the zinnias to the water, with the children hollering off the dock. And then, look at me sideways and say some version of the same sentence. This right here, they would say. This is what it used to feel like, Odessa. This is what we lost. And more than one of them said the other sentence too, the dangerous one. the one I never once answered. Why don't you just do the reunion out here and let that hall keep its deposit? I will tell you exactly what I said every time somebody asked me that, because what I said and what I did not say is the whole spine of this story. I said, the reunion is my son's this year, and I want it to go beautiful for him. But my table is set every Sunday, and everybody at it is welcome. And that is all I have to say about that. And then I would go check my fish. Ruthie accused me of being a politician about it. Maybe I was. But here's the thing I would not let myself do. Not once. Not even the evening I wanted to most. I never sent one invitation. I never posted one picture. I never said one soft word against that hall to one single Freeman. If my family was going to walk down my slope in July, they were going to walk it on their own feet, or not at all. A shepherd with a rope is just a different kind of wolf. Kendra came out exactly once that June, on the last Sunday of the month, dropping the children off while Malcolm worked. I watched her get out of that clean white car and stand at the top of my gravel walk in her good sandals, looking at the buttermilk house with its green shutters, at the zinnia border going down loud as a choir toward the water, at the 20-foot table under the water oaks, already set, with Mother Hastings installed at the far end shelling butter beans and Sylvester slapping a domino down like a judgment. My daughter-in-law stood there a long minute with her sunglasses up on her head, and I came down the walk wiping my hands and watched her watch it all. And what I saw cross her face was not scorn, children. It was arithmetic. It was a woman counting something and not liking the total. "It's beautiful, Mama Odessa," she said. And she meant it, which is what made it complicated. I didn't picture it like this. "Stay and eat," I said. "There's plenty." She looked at the table, and I watched her want to. I did. Whatever gets said about Kendra in this family, I watched that girl want a plate of fish at a wooden table for one entire second before the phone went off in her hand. She glanced at it, and something in her jaw set back into place, and she said, "The vendor call. We have the final vendor call at 5. And she kissed the air near my cheek, told Zora to be good, and drove back to town to go manage a reunion, leaving the actual family standing in the actual yard. I watched her taillights go up the gravel, and I said a prayer for her right there, with my hands still smelling like cornmeal. Because I recognized her, that's why. I had been her. 33 years of believing that if you just organize a thing hard enough, it becomes love. It does not, baby. It becomes logistics. Love is what shows up anyway. That was June. The dock held every cannonball. The collards stood up in their rows like a congregation. The zinnias came in so bright the mail carrier slowed down for them. My son and I loved each other from 40 minutes apart with a canyon in between, and the second Saturday came on like weather. And page 4 of that contract lay in its folder in Malcolm's clean office, patient, coiled, waiting on its day. Its day was a Tuesday, 3 weeks out. Patrice called me twice that Tuesday, and I missed both, because I was up a stepladder handing Brantley porch screen. When I finally sat down with my lemonade and called her back, she answered on half a ring, and her voice had that hushed running sound a fire truck puts in people. "Aunt Odessa, the hall canceled them." I said, "Canceled? Canceled how?" "It's paid for. The deposit's paid for. Listen," and I could hear her scrolling, reading it off the chat where Kendra had posted the letter itself, because Kendra, to her credit, hid nothing. "Dear valued client, due to a scheduling conflict, the Magnolia Room will be unable to host your event on the reserved date. Per Section 4.2 of your agreement, the venue retains the right to reassign event dates based on booking priority. Alternative dates are available. Deposits are non-refundable, but may be applied as credit toward a future event within 12 months. Patrice let that sit and then said the plain of it. A wedding came in behind them. Aunt Odessa. Full buyout, both rooms, open bar. Somebody with real money wanted that July Saturday, and the Freemans had the cheap package and the fine print did the rest. They offered Malcolm the following Tuesday. A Tuesday, Auntie, for a family reunion or a banquet room that seats 40, next to somebody's retirement party. And the money? $850, Patrice said. Gone, well, gone into credit, which the man on the phone kept saying as if it were a favor, and Malcolm kept saying, credit toward what? We have one reunion a year, and the man said. Weddings book out, sir. I'd encourage you to think of this as an opportunity. An opportunity. Malcolm hollered so loud Kendra took the phone. Now I want to stop right here and tell on myself all the way, because this is the part of the story where I get asked one question more than any other. What did it feel like, hearing it? And I have turned that Tuesday over many times, and the truth of it sits in layers, the same as truth always arrives. The first feeling, and I'm not proud of it, lasted about the length of one heartbeat. And it was warm, and it tasted like vindication, and anybody who tells you they have never had that heartbeat has not been wronged yet. But the second feeling came in right behind it, like a hand on a shoulder. And the second feeling was, my boy. Because I knew what that letter cost him. And it was not $850. He had stood up before a table full of family and taken the torch in front of everybody, and now the torch had gone out in his hand, where all of them could see. 47 witnesses on one thread, and there is no lonelier arithmetic in this world. And the third feeling, under both, quiet as a foundation, was this. Lord, you did not do this for me, and I will not act like you did, but I do notice the date you let it happen on. 3 weeks out. Enough time. Enough time for what? I did not let myself finish, and that is the truth too. Ruthie had no such layers. Ruthie arrived at the lake before supper with her church fan going even in the car, and she came up my walk announcing, the stone the builders rejected. Don't you dare tell me you're not thinking it. I'm thinking a lot of things. 40 Freemans with no place to be that second Saturday, and the finest reunion yard in the state of Georgia sitting right here with a 20-foot table already built. God is not subtle, Odessa. He has never been subtle. He turned water to wine at a party. This is exactly the kind of thing he does. And if I pick up that phone, I said, and say, come to my house, then what did I just do to my son? My sister opened her mouth and I kept on. I'll tell you what I did. I took the reunion off a man who's already had it taken once this week. I'd be the whole steakhouse dinner, run backwards. No, if this family lands on my grass, Ruthie, it will not be, because I called them home like a bell. Somebody else can ring. I aim to fry fish for whoever's in front of me on Sunday, same as I've been doing. And I'm going to pray for my child, and that is the whole plan. That is not a plan, that's a pot roast with scripture on it. It's worked so far, I said. And my sister threw her hands up and went and got herself a plate. Because even prophets have to eat. But while I was holding still, that chat, children, was moving. Patrice read me the whole progression over the next 2 days like a radio serial. First came the practical ones. Somebody's sister-in-law knew a hall in Phoenix City. Booked. The Legion Post, booked. And besides, no shade and 1 bathroom. The State Park Pavilions had gone in a lottery back in March. Somebody proposed a restaurant buyout and somebody else replied, we already gave $25 a head. And that thread went quiet and mean. Then came the drift I had been feeling all June. Except, now, it had nowhere to hide. Renetta wrote it out, and Patrice read it to me twice, because I made her. "I'm just going to say what everybody's thinking," Renetta wrote. "The best reunion this family ever had was in a backyard, and the person whose backyard it was got left off this very chat, and maybe that's where all this bad luck started." And the chat, all 47 of them, aunts and cousins and grandnephews from 3 states, sat with that in silence for 4 whole minutes, which in a group chat is a geological age. And then my grandson Elijah, 14 years old, who had said maybe 11 words in that thread all summer, posted one thing. He posted the video. Copper water, cannonball, Grandma's lake hits different. No caption. That child put no caption on it, because he is his grandfather's grandson, and he understood that the thing speaks for itself. Kendra called Patrice that night, not hot, careful, and asked one question. "Is Mama Odessa's number in this chat yet?" And Patrice said, "No, nobody had ever added me. Out of shame or habit or whatever keeps a wrong sitting in a room like a chair everybody walks around." And Kendra, my daughter-in-law, whose printed cards and vendor calls and hashtag had gone up like scaffolding around this family all spring, was quiet on the line a second, and then she said, "Okay." Then nobody has actually asked her anything. Everybody's out here deciding what she'd say without asking her. Another second. "That's what we did in April too," and she hung up before Patrice could get a word around it. I did not know about that call when it happened. I have assembled it since, from Patrice and much later from Kendra herself at the cedar table, with coffee, in a conversation I hold as one of the treasures of my old age. But I want it in the story right here, in its right place, because it matters who moved first. It was not my son, and it was not me. It was the 2 women, Renetta, who said the wrong out loud, and Kendra, who recognized her own handwriting on it. The knock on my door came Thursday evening, 2 days after the letter. Not a phone call. Tires crunching up the gravel while I was watering my zinnias in the last cool, and I looked up expecting Brantley, and it was the clean white car, and not the children she let out this time. It was just Kendra in her work clothes, holding her keys in both hands like something you might need to give back. She stood at the foot of my walk, and I stood at the crest of it with the watering can, and the zinnias burned orange and pink down both sides of the distance between us. And my daughter-in-law looked at me and said, "Mama Odessa, I owe you a conversation, and Malcolm doesn't know I'm here." I set the watering can down on the step and said, "Then you'd better come sit on the porch, baby, because the gnats will carry you off standing there." We sat in the 2 rockers with sweet tea neither one of us drank, and my daughter-in-law looked out at the water a while. And then she did something I had never once seen her do in 11 years of marriage to my son. She started, without a plan. "I keep starting this in my head and it keeps coming out like a presentation," she said. "So I'm just going to say it ugly. The dinner in April was my fault as much as his. The private room was my idea. The chat was my idea. Leaving you off it." And her voice caught there, caught and held, like a heel in a sidewalk crack. There was a version of me that called that being efficient. "You manage the difficult stakeholder. That's what I do all day, Mama Odessa. I manage things. And I came home and managed a 61-year-old woman out of her own family, and I knew it while I was doing it. And I let myself not know it, if that makes sense." "It makes more sense than most confessions I've heard," I said, "and I've heard some professionals." She laughed, one wet syllable of it, and pressed on. "The hall's gone. You know that. Everybody knows everything. That's what a chat is. He's got the credit letter framed in his head like it's an indictment. He won't call the family. He won't call the venue back, and he will not call you. He sits in the office with a spreadsheet open. And the second Saturday is 17 days out, and 40-some people with gas money spent and shirts already ordered are about to have no reunion at all. Over pride. His pride, my optics, this family's whole allergy to saying the simple thing. She turned in the rocker and faced me. So I'm here to say the simple thing. You have the place. You have the table. Everybody knows where the reunion wants to be. It's been in every video all summer. I'm not here to ask you to rescue him. I'm here to ask you what would have to be true for you to say yes. Children. I have replayed that question 100 times because it was the most respectful question anybody asked me that entire year. Not, will you? Not, you should. What would have to be true? That is how you ask a grown woman something. I rocked a minute. The lake did its evening trick where it goes to hammered pewter. And I said 2 things, and neither one moves. First, it cannot come from me, and it cannot come from you. If the Freemans want this yard, a Freeman has to ask for it out loud where all of them can see, and it has to be somebody with nothing to gain. I will not be the woman who circled all summer, waiting for her son to drop the torch so she could catch it in front of everybody. I'd rather cancel July. Kendra nodded slow, and I could see her filing it, and I did not mind, because filing things is that girl's love language, and I had finally learned to read it. Second, my son is not a beaten man being carried off a field. Whatever this turns into, he walks into it as somebody, or I want no part. I have sat where he's sitting, baby, fresher than you know. Being wrong feels enough like dying without your whole family watching you do it on a group chat. Kendra looked at me for a long minute, and something in her face came loose that had been strapped down since April. Maybe longer, maybe since a wedding where she buttoned that jacket for him the first time. She said, quiet, "He told me once that you never once made his daddy feel small, even the year the mill cut him to half shifts and things got hard. He remembers that. He mentions it." She stood up and smoothed her work skirt and picked her keys back up off the rail. "I won't say anything. That's your first condition and I'll keep it. But Mama Odessa, for whatever it's worth in this family of stubborn people, I hope somebody rings the bell soon, because I have eaten the catered scallop, and I would rather have the fish." The bell rang Saturday morning. It rang long distance, from a recliner through Patrice's phone onto the chat, and it rang in the voice of the one Freeman alive, with nothing to prove and nothing to gain. My daddy's last living brother. Sylvester dictated it, Patrice typed it, and she read it to me after, word for word, and I will give it to you the same, because it deserves the record. To the Freeman family, I am 81 years old. I have been to every reunion this family has held since Eisenhower, and I will tell you what a reunion is, since apparently it has gotten confusing. It is not a hall. It is not a hashtag. It is a table with your people around it, and this family has exactly one table long enough, and I have personally eaten fish at it, and it sits on the prettiest 2 acres in the valley, and the woman who owns it has been setting it every Sunday for anybody with sense enough to show up. I am not asking her permission, and I'm not asking anybody's blessing. I am 81. On the second Saturday of July, I am going to be at Odessa Freeman's lake house with my dominoes, because that is where the family is, whether the family knows it yet or not. Somebody bring ice. Patrice said the chat sat still for about 90 seconds, and then it went off like a skillet of popcorn. Renetta first, we'll be there, and the ribs are on me. Then Clotilde, save me a seat in the shade. Then the Detroit cousins asking, is there room to park a camper? Then people just posting the little raised hands, one after another, 11 of them in a row at one point. And my grandson posted the copper water video one more time, and this time he put a caption on it. Told y'all. And then, children, at 10:41 that Saturday morning, something happened that I did not see, because I was elbow deep in a fish cooler, but which I have been shown since, preserved under glass in that phone, the same as a pressed flower. Elijah added a member to the Freeman Reunion group chat. He added his grandmother. No announcement, no apology, no speech. 14 years old, one tap of a thumb, and a wrong that grown folks had walked around like furniture since April was simply gone. The same as it had simply arrived. The first thing I ever saw on that chat was my great-nephew in Detroit asking about the camper. And the second thing I saw was 40-some people waiting. The whole thread gone quiet the moment my name appeared. Everybody watching the little dots to see what Mama Odessa would say. I sat down on my porch step with Ruthie reading over my shoulder, and I typed it myself, slow, with one finger, and I checked it twice for spelling, and here is the whole of what I wrote. All Freemans and all who love them are welcome at my table on the second Saturday. Come after 10. Bring a chair if you have one and a story if you remember one. The fish, the greens, and the shade are spoken for. Grandma's lake will be ready. And then, because Zora would want it, I added the one little firecracker, and I put my phone in my apron pocket and went back to my cooler. And out on the water, a boat horn went off just then, some strangers celebrating some other thing entirely, and Ruthie hollered amen at it anyway. What followed was 2 weeks of the sweetest work of my life. The men's ministry came back like the cavalry coming home. Tents borrowed off the church picnic supply. Folding tables lashed in truck beds. A second fryer that Brantley rebuilt the regulator on with Calhoun's own wrenches. The choir ladies took over my kitchen in shifts, and Sister Rosalie, who ran a drapery business 30 years, went home with a bolt of white broadcloth and came back with a banner long as a John boat. Every letter cut and stitched by hand in red and blue, family reunion. And the ladies strung it proud across the deck rail where you could read it clean from the middle of the lake. Mother Hastings supervised all of it from a lawn chair with an umbrella, issuing decrees. 1 week out, the RSVPs stood at 43, campers and all. Kendra put her own name down with the children's. Quietly, no comment, 3 raised hands. One name did not appear that whole week, and everybody saw it not appearing, and nobody said one word about it, least of all me. 3 days out, I stopped sleeping proper, and I would get up before light and walk the yard in the dew with my coffee, down the zinnia walk, past the long table waiting under its oaks, out to the end of the smooth dock, and I would stand there in my housecoat and say the same thing every morning. Lord, you have outdone yourself, and I'm not going to pretend I deserve it. But you know who's missing. You know I set a table for him, whether he comes or not. Both kinds of table, Lord. You know what I mean. That Saturday came in clear, children. I want you to see it, because standing in it felt like being handed back something I had turned loose of forever. A sky so blue and so high it looked freshly painted, and by 7 in the morning the heat was already leaning on the land, the good July kind. The kind 33 reunions had taught my body like a hymn. I had been up since 4. Of course I had been up since 4. What else would I be? Ruthie found me at the Friars in the gray light, with 3 coolers of catfish and crappy ice down, and my apron already floured to the elbow. And she did not say good morning, she said. 33 years and you still won't let anybody else season the fish, and I said, and I won't start on year 34 either. Hand me the paprika. And that was our whole devotional. By 8, the church had landed. Brantley in a clean shirt that would not stay clean. running the second fryer like an engine room. The young men stringing the last of the lights and hauling ice. So much ice. Ice in tubs. Ice in coolers. Ice in a clawfoot bathtub Maxine had produced from one of her estate sales and would not explain. The choir ladies laid the 20-foot table first, because some things go in order. White cloths and Mother Hastings's good centerpiece zinnias, cut from my own walk, cut loud, orange and pink together, and down the rail of the deck Sister Rosalie's banner took the morning breeze and filled like a sail. Family reunion, red and blue on white, hand-stitched, readable from the water. I stopped in the middle of carrying lemonade and looked at it a full minute. A year before, I had been a line item on somebody's spreadsheet. Now my name was a place. They started coming at 10. You could hear them before you could see them. That's the thing about a gravel road, it announces. Tires and dust and the first horn, and then here they came down out of the trees, one after another. Trucks and sedans and the Detroit camper swaying like a tired elephant, and Renetta's husband leaning out a window hollering, "Odessa Freeman. We found it. We made it," and car doors going off all up the drive like applause. 43 had said yes. I counted 51 through the course of that day, because a reunion with food in a yard obeys arithmetic no Hall has ever heard of. Folks I had fed as babies brought babies for me to feed. Cousin Weldon from Albany, who had not come since Harold's funeral because gatherings made him think of it, came and stood down by the water a while alone, and then came up and ate 3 plates, and told me quiet, "I should have been driving out here all along, Odessa. I let one funeral keep me home from 100 good days." Clotilde arrived from Montgomery with a hat on that deserved its own parking space, took one long look down that walk of zinnias to the dock and the banner and the table, and said, loud enough for the county, "Well, I see the old ways been doing all right for themselves." And the whole yard laughed, and that laugh was the ribbon cutting. The reunion was open. And Lord, it ran. It ran the whole day like a good reunion runs, on grease and hollering and sugar. The fish came up golden and kept coming, and my potato salad, the one my son had waved off in a steakhouse in May, got scraped to the bowl shine twice. And I just kept making it. Because this year there was more where that came from. Plenty and to spare. Sylvester established his dominoes at a card table in the deep shade and fleeced 3 generations before the ice cream got churned. "Read them and weep, baby," he told a great-nephew, laying a bone down like a gavel. "Your granddaddy never once beat me at this table, and you surely will not. Then how come you need a paper crown to prove it, Unc?" The boy shot back, and Sylvester said, "Because I earned it, and because your cousin Zora has better taste than the lot of you." He wore his hat of triumph, an actual crown Zora made him from a paper plate. The young men and the teenage cousins went off the dock in waves, cannonball contest judged by Mother Hastings, who held up fingers for scores and gave nobody higher than a 7 all afternoon on the grounds that pride is a sin. 6, she would call out, flat as a judge. Too much splashing and not near enough Jesus. Elijah filmed everything and posted nothing that day. I noticed it. He just kept it. The whole day in that phone. Like a boy filling jars. My Zora wore a yellow sundress, bought special, and lost both her shoes by 11 in the morning, as is right and proper, and she attached herself to my apron strings half the day, and middle of the afternoon she hugged my waist while I was pouring lemonade at the deck rail, and looked up at me with that gap where her tooth used to be, and said, "Grandma, this is the best one there's ever been." And I looked down the yard at everything. The table full end to end. The smoke standing off the fryers. My church and my blood folded together in one shade, the water beyond it all glittering like scattered change, and I had my keys down in my apron. I always had them somewhere on me. And I closed my hand around that little cedar fob with the 2 burned words, and I said, "Baby, I believe you might be right." And she said, "Can I have more lemonade?" Because 8-year-olds conduct the entire business of heaven and earth in one breath. And I poured it. Around 4, Deacon Brantley got out his guitar. This also goes in order. You have to be fed first, and shade lazy, and the light has to have started coming in low and gold off the water. He carried a chair down to the dock, our smooth sanded dock, and set up at the end of it like it was a stage the lake had built him. And the choir ladies drifted down and gathered around. And then everybody drifted, plates in hands, children dripping, old knees taking the slope slow, until 100 Freemans were spread down my yard from the oaks to the water. And they sang. The lining out kind first, deep and slow, a voice going ahead and the family coming up under it like water rising, and then the clapping kind, and Mother Hastings got up out of her lawn chair for one song, 88 years old, and directed the whole lake like Sunday morning, and the sound went out over the water in the gold light. And the boats out there, I am telling you the truth. 3 different boats cut their motors to drift and listen, and one man stood up in his and took his cap off, the second cap that Doc had collected, and held it to his chest till the song was done. I stood halfway up the slope with a pitcher sweating in my hand, watching all of it, and Ruthie came and stood next to me and put her arm through mine, and neither one of us said one word for a long time. Every face I had ever fed was in one yard, singing toward the water, under a banner sewn by hands that had scrubbed my floors. This was the reunion. Children. Not a comeback, not a victory, not a statement. The 47 names had come off the phone and turned back into people, and the people were home, and I had not rung one bell to bring them. I felt Harold everywhere that afternoon, in the smoke and the dominoes and the wax paper smell of the fish, and standing there I told him, silently, the news he had been waiting on since a photograph got tucked in a tackle box. "We got the porch, old man," I said to him. "We got the water. Someday came, Harold. It came late, and it came without you, and I carried the last of it by myself. But it came, and it is prettier than either one of us ever had the nerve to picture. And it was right then, right at the height of that singing, in the fattest gold of the afternoon, that I heard, faint under the music, tires on the gravel. One more car, coming slow, late, careful, like it was not sure of its welcome. I did not have to look. A mother knows a sound the same as a ringtone. But I looked anyway, and up at the top of the drive a gray sedan I knew as well as my own hands rolled to a stop apart from all the other cars, apart on purpose, and sat there a minute with its engine off, and nobody getting out. And then the door opened, and my boy stood up out of it, into the dust he had raised, and he was holding, Lord help him, Lord help all of us proud people, 2 folding chairs, and his phone. Nobody else heard the car, because right then Sylvester stood up at the front of the yard and hollered, "If somebody does not hand me a cold drink and everybody's attention directly, I mean to start charging this family my consulting rate." The singing folded up into laughing, and the whole crowd came flowing back up the slope to the long table, because a Sylvester toast is a scheduled monument, and folks packed in around that cedar table, and the card tables ringed out from it like planets, and plates got balanced, and children got collected onto laps. And so it happened that at the exact minute my son came walking down his mother's gravel drive, carrying 2 folding chairs nobody needed, 51 members of his family had their backs to him, faced the other direction, raising their cups toward me. I saw him, though. I was seated at the head of my table, which they made me take, And past all those gathered heads I watched my child walk down out of the trees into the yard he had never once seen, and I watched the yard do to him what it does. Watched him slow. Watched his eyes go down the zinnia walk, over the tents, over the tubs of ice, and the bathtub of ice, out to the dock where the guitar still leaned, out to the water, back up to the buttermilk house, to the banner filling and going slack and filling along the deck rail, red and blue on white. Family reunion. He stopped at the yard gate, the little cedar gate Brantley hung in June at the foot of the deck stairs, and he did not open it. He stood outside it with a folding chair in each hand, and I watched my son read that banner 4 times. And Sylvester, who did not know, Lord, the timing of that old man, Sylvester raised his cup of red drink and said, "I'm not going to preach. Everybody exhale. I'm 81, and I only got the one speech left in me, so here it is." And the yard got quiet, the deep kind, just Friar Tick and water. I have been coming to Freeman reunions since before most of you had faces, and I heard a lot of foolishness this year about old ways and new ways, so as the oldest way here, let me settle it. There is no old ways and new ways. There is only the ways that gather and the ways that scatter. That's it. That's the whole inheritance. He had to stop and be 81 for a second, and nobody breathed. This spring, one of us got told she'd ruin this, got left off the list by her own. And what did she do with it? Did she scatter? She went and found 2 acres of gathered up waiting, and she set a table for whoever the Lord sent, and she never said one word against a soul. And looky here. He swept that cup slow across the whole shining yard, the table, the water, all of us. 50-some Freemans under one shade with fish grease on their fingers. The hall put us out, but this woman never did learn how. So stand up if your knees allow, and lift whatever you're holding to my brother's baby girl, to the woman the family forgot to invite, to Odessa. The reunion didn't get ruined, y'all. It got found. This right here is the family's true home, and it has been all along, wherever this woman sets her table. 51 people stood up and said my name at one time. Children, I do not have the words for what that does to a person, so I will not embarrass us both trying. I stood there with my hand pressed flat on Brantley's cedar so the table would hold me up. The table, holding me up. You hear it. And I let my family look at me, and I looked at them. And then over their heads I looked at the gate, because a mother never fully looks anywhere else. He was still there, still outside it. He had set the folding chairs down against the fence, finally, the way you set down something you have carried much farther than it was worth, and he had his phone gripped in his fist. And I knew what was open on it without seeing it, that letter, that credit toward a future event letter. Because shame rereads itself, that is what shame does. It is the only book shame owns. And my son stood at the bottom of the deck stairs on the wrong side of a little cedar gate, while his whole family toasted his mother. And he did not melt down loud. That is not Malcolm. He melted the quiet way. I watched his shoulders come off their scaffolding. I watched him look for somewhere to put his eyes and find the banner again, hand-stitched, 4 feet from his face. I watched my 37-year-old boy blink up at the sky exactly like he did at 9 years old when the wrench was the wrong wrench, and put the phone in his pocket, and put it back in his hand, and not come in, and not leave. Zora saw him then. She hollered Daddy across the whole yard, pure joy, no history in it at all, and 51 heads turned. And there it was, children. The moment every mean little version of this story would have died for. The whole family, the same family from the steakhouse, looking at him, standing outside the gate with his folding chairs in the dust. The silence lasted maybe 2 heartbeats, and it had every possible future in it. I did not let it pick one on its own. I was already moving. I had been moving, I think, since the gravel first spoke, because my hands had made him a plate without consulting me. They know his plate by heart. Fish and the potato salad and a wedge of Rosalie's coconut cake. And I picked up the sweating pitcher of lemonade in my other hand, and I came down that yard through my family with my keys swinging against my hip in my apron pocket, and folks parted and turned back to their plates as I passed. Because Mother Hastings said, "Low but with authority, y'all mind your suppers and leave that boy be." And the yard obeyed her, and the noise came back up like tide filling in, which was mercy. Mercy for him, organized by an 88-year-old woman in half a second. I crossed the grass, and I stood across the little gate from my boy, and I held up his plate. Up close his face was wrecked in the quiet way, jaw working, eyes shining and jumping anywhere but at me, and he started the speech he had surely built in that gray sedan all the slow drive out. "Mama, the hall, I know you heard, and I should have called you back in June. I kept meaning to, and then it all." And the speech ran out right there. It just quit on him. The whole prepared thing collapsed, and my son looked down at the folding chairs in the dust and said the true sentence underneath it, the one I will hear in my chest until they lay me down. He said, "I brought chairs. I didn't know what else to bring. You don't even need chairs. I can see it from here, Mama. You didn't need any of what I—" And he stopped and made himself finish it while his voice went to pieces of itself. "I said you'd ruin it. I stood up at a table you would have set better and said you would ruin it. And I have thought about it every day since April. And Mama, the only thing that got ruined this year was ruined by me, and I don't know how to. There's no—" And he lifted the phone, that letter still lit up on it, and let his hand drop, empty of everything a spreadsheet ever promised him. I don't know how a person even asks, "Is there?" And my child, at his mother's gate, in front of the 90 feet of water the Lord and a church had given her, asked me the question I had been answering at 4 in the morning in my housecoat all week. "Is there room?" I set the pitcher on the gatepost. I put the plate in his hands, and I opened the gate from my side, because some doors a mother keeps oiled her whole life against exactly this weather, and I said, "Baby, look down yonder at that table." He looked. 2 fat cedar chairs, one at each end, mine, and across 20 feet of pegged old growth, one more. Empty since 10 o'clock in the morning, with nobody's cup in front of it, and nobody's plate claiming it, in the fullest yard this family ever gathered. 51 people asked me all day who that seat was for, I said. And all day I told them, that seat is spoken for. And I did not say another word, because I made this whole family a promise back in April, though didn't none of them hear me make it. I promised I was not going to fight you, and I never did. But son, I never once stopped setting your place. Now come in this gate. Your fish is getting cold, and your uncle is about to say something else, and nobody should face that hungry. He came in the gate. He walked up that yard beside me, carrying his plate with both hands like a boy carrying the communion tray. And his family did him the enormous kindness of being busy eating. And Zora hit him at the knees halfway up the slope and rode his shoes the rest of it. And that helped him. A man can walk through anything with a laughing child on his feet. Kendra stood up when he got close. Whatever passed between them passed in about a second and a half, the whole spring of it, and then she took one of the folding chairs out from under his arm and set it up next to her own seat for Zora. And just like that, his foolish chairs had a use after all. And that, children, was Kendra's Grace. Small and practical and exactly her size, and I have loved her differently ever since. He sat down in the cedar chair at the end of the table. It fit him. Brantley built those 2 end chairs generous. An end chair, he said, has to hold whoever the years decide to put in it. And Sylvester, who had watched every bit of this over the rim of his cup, did not preach, and did not spare him either, because that is not our family, and it is not this story. He just called down 20 feet of table, loud enough for 3 counties. Boy, your mama fried this fish, so mind you don't cry on it, it's salty enough. And the table roared, and my son laughed, wet-eyed, wide open, the first laugh of his I had heard since April. And he answered, "Yes, sir," and ate. He ate 3 plates. He came back up to the fryer for the 3rd one himself, and stood next to me while I turned fish, not saying much, sleeves pushed up. After a while he said, low, so only I could hear, "It's prettier than the videos, Mama, a lot prettier." And I said, "Wait until the lights come on, baby, then tell me." And when the batch came golden, he reached for the tongs, tongue at the corner of his mouth like at 12 years old, and every aunt in the yard pretended not to supervise, and I handed those tongs over the same as my own mother once handed them to me. Some things pass down a family the long way around, but they pass. The evening came on slow and showed off doing it. The string lights came up under the oaks, and the fireflies came up under everything, and the children went shrieking after them through the dark grass while the elders sat heavy and content. And along toward 9, Brantley carried his guitar back down to the dock for the last singing, which is the soft kind, the day is over kind. And near 50 voices went out across that black water under all those stars. And my son stood on the dock his mother's church had built, between his wife and his children, and sang the old words with the rest of us, wherever it was he had them stored all these years. I stood at the end with my toes over the water. Somebody's hand found my shoulder in the dark, Ruthie's. Then somebody's found my waist, Zora's, yellow dress gone gray in the dark and damp at the hem, and we sang until Mother Hastings declared the day complete. And she has the authority. The last car went up the gravel at 11. Malcolm and his family stayed the night. Zora in my guest room she has since claimed outright. And past midnight my son and I sat alone on the deck steps with Decaf, under the banner Gone Quiet in the nighttime, and we talked. Some of it stays hours. But I will give you the tale of it. He said, "Next year I want to do this again, right here, if you'll have it. And I want to help, not run it. Help," and I said, "You can have the fryer at 4 in the morning. That's the job nobody fights you for." And he said, "I'll be here at 3 then, so nobody can say I slept in on you." And he laughed, and then he did not laugh, and he said, "Mama, what I said at that dinner, I'm going to be sorry about it the rest of my life." And I put my hand over his hand on his knee, and I told him the thing I had learned on that water, the thing this whole year cost me and paid me. Then I'll say the rest of it now so you can quit rereading it. Son, you did hurt me. I won't take that from you by pretending. But hear me, if that dinner doesn't happen, I'm still on Rosemont Drive tonight, rattling around 4 rooms of quiet, waiting for the phone to tell me I'm useful. You closed the wrong door, and the Lord walked me to the right one, and He used your own words to do it. That's how He works, baby, nothing wasted. Not even our worst night. So you go on and be sorry the right amount, and then you be at my table Sunday, because being there is the only apology I have ever wanted. Pastor read it out that next morning at New Hope, and I sat in my pew between my sister and my son in the church that sanded my dock, and heard it with my whole body. The stone that the builders rejected, the same has become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118, verse 22. Now I am 61 years old, and I know church words can float past like weather if you let them. So I will land it plain, the whole meaning of my year, and then I will let you go. The people who set you aside are not the last word on you. They are builders, and builders make mistakes, and the Lord is in the business of picking up what got set aside and making it the corner the whole house stands on. But here is the part I need you to hear. The part that Steakhouse taught me. Being the cornerstone is not a triumph over the builders, baby. The corner holds the builders up too. That is the entire point of a corner. My son stands on my 2 acres now, the same as everybody else, and it holds him, and there is no sweeter revenge than that, because it is not revenge at all. It is a foundation. So that is my story. I lost a seat at a rented table and gained 90 feet of shoreline. I sold the house love built and bought the house love was waiting in. My family got broken apart by a group chat and put back together by a doc, an 81-year-old man with dominoes, a 14-year-old with 1 video, and a God who does not miss. The reunion is at the lake again next summer. It was voted on the chat, unanimous, and my son is bringing the folding chairs, all of them, on purpose, as a joke he gets to be inside of now. And notebook 34 sits in the drawer by my new stove with the others, and the last line of the reunion page says what I will say to you now. 51 fed, nobody missing. Someday came. Before you go, sit with me 1 more minute, because I have wondered something the whole time I have been telling you this, and I truly want to know. That afternoon at the gate, with the whole family watching and every right in the world on my side, I handed my son a plate and showed him his seat. Would you have kept that seat empty for him like I did, or would you have let him stand outside that gate a while first, so he understood the shape of what he almost broke? Tell me the truth in the comments, because I read every one, and us old women compare notes. And if this story found the sore place in you and pressed on it gentle, do me the kindness, tap that like button and subscribe, and share it with somebody who got told they'd just ruin it, whatever there it was. Because somewhere tonight there is a woman sitting in a parking lot with her heart going sideways, believing she is finished, and she needs to hear what I know now. You are not finished, baby. You are a cornerstone somebody set down in the wrong pile. Go find your water, set your table, and keep a seat, because they do come walking down the gravel, sooner or later, nearly every time. This is Odessa Freeman, at the lake with the porch light on. Good night from Grandma's lake, and God bless you real good.